Coming up, why 1956 to 1994 was not only a historical anomaly, it was also the renaissance of popular music. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Ministry of Guitar. I'm Utkarsh coming to you from Singapore. In case you're wondering where I've been here. I've just been busy writing my book. It's a history book, it'll come up in some time, and I've been busy with my channel, my guitar channel, which I've been working on as well. In any case, let's talk about music. What is the best music? It's a very subjective discussion. And typically what you would see is that the music that people grow up with, which is the music that they listen to between the ages 15 to 25, is usually what they would consider the best music. This is why a boomer would never win an argument against a Gen X, against a millennial, against a Gen Z. Each one would have a different definition because of the different music that came out in that time. And this rule by far is generally true, but there are perhaps certain periods and there are perhaps certain pieces of music, certain pieces of work that stand out. This is very, very clear when it comes to paintings, for example, right? When you look at the paintings, there have been great painters for the longest period of time, right? You had great painters in the 15th century, ancient world, and you have great painters today. But there is a reason that a certain period of painting is considered the Renaissance. I mean, it's more than just painting. There's a lot of happening with science, etc. All of the famous Western history on the Enlightenment. But nonetheless, there is a certain iconic period of the Renaissance and there are certain iconic paintings. And by far, those are considered to be the high watermark for painting. Whereas whatever comes, even today, some get famous, some sell for huge amounts of money. But the high watermark is often considered the Renaissance. That's why people keep hankering after going after these masters. I have the strongest suspicion that the same thing is also true for popular music. I would say popular Western music because the influence of this is primarily in the Western world, but you do see its influences go out even to non-Western countries. And 1956 to 1994 is a very unique period. I'll explain what each of the dates are, though some of you may have already guessed it. This was a period where popular music, the music that topped the charts, that music that most people listened to, was driven by a creative artistic imagination versus a monetary incentive. I mean, the monetary incentive was there, but the creative artistic imagination was able to overcome the monetary incentive, and that was the primary force behind all the great music. That is not true today, because today, as we have talked about, and as many other channels and many other people have talked about, popular music and popular artists are broadly created by committee as a way to guarantee a certain cash flow and a certain level of profitability for the companies in the music business. That's how it works today. This does not mean that great songs are not written today. Great maybe not, but this does not mean that good songs are not written today. But by and large, insert any popular artist of today, they're done by committee. K-pop is a very good example, where if you think of the very, very popular bands like, what are they called? How am I blanking out on the most famous band starting with B? I blanked out on their name, which is a good thing because I don't care about them. But the most popular band in the world, and Blackpink, and the other one that collaborated with Coldplay, BTS. They were created by committee. K-pop is an industry. People literally, they are scouted from a young age. People prepare. It's literally like preparing for an exam. And when you get into that industry, you are a soldier in that industry of entertainment. And Western pop is kind of moving that way, where you are more of a person who demonstrates an ability to have a social following, who has some musical inkling, and then you are boosted up by the right investments and put behind you. So that is the way the music works today. That is kind of the way music worked pre-1956 as well. Because though you had a lot of huge stars pre-1956, not too many, because popular communication had just, global communication, or rather mass communication, had just emerged, right, with radio in the 20s, a little bit of television beginning in the 50s. But again, it was mostly done by the powers that be. 1956, something changed. Music became a little bit more individualized, or rather, what became popular is something that made the establishment less than comfortable. Yeah, the establishment that is trying to make money would hardly push something that would be risky or would be making them uncomfortable. But in 1956, someone called Elvis Presley and a song called Heartbreak Hotel went up, right? Topped the charts. And Heartbreak Hotel, if you compare that to pretty much anything else at the time, it's different. It's got an angst because you see the most of the music of that era, there could be sad songs, there could be happy songs, but there weren't angsty songs, right? So at Heartbreak Hotel is definitely a very, very angsty song. And that kind of opened the door to essentially artistic angst, teenage angst, creative angst, just the angst of being, to dominate in a way it hadn't. And this was a very, very, very human expression versus something that has been determined by executives that this is what people want. Not to say that artists between 1956 and 1994 did not operate with constraints. There were constraints on the length of singles based on the LP players, so on and so forth, and there were music executives constantly doing what they needed to do, like Brian Epstein and the Beatles. But nonetheless, the movers and shakers, the primary force makers, wow, I was not trying to rap there, but they were essentially artists. The Beatles were artists, right? All of them were great songwriters. Maybe not Ringo so much, but you know what I mean, right? And even if you look at the top bands of the 70s and 80s, you look at Freddie Mercury from Queen, if you look at some of the most popular musicians, they were also incredible musicians. Think of Stevie Wonder. Even Michael Jackson, incredible singer, incredible dancer. Songwriting, I'm not so sure how exactly his contribution is, but I think the other two already make him a legend. So you had people who were genuinely incredible at their craft at the top of popular music. And this was happening in such a way that you could be incredible at your craft, but you could be terrible at other things, and yet sometimes you even made it to the top. For me, Kurt Cobain is a great example of that, because Kurt Cobain is probably the most unsocial person you can think of. Right? Can you imagine Kurt Cobain having an Instagram account today, fishing for likes, sharing all his songs with different people so that they can like it? I don't think so. He's quite withdrawn. Yet there was a period of time where his songs were the biggest songs in the world. Not just the biggest songs in rock, but the biggest songs in the world. Say 1991 with Nevermind. Right? And for me, the death of Kurt Cobain, and just after the album In Utero in 1994, represents the end of that era. Because the 90s was kind of the transition, and perhaps I'm choosing Kurt Cobain's death as that point, where suddenly the pendulum swung back to production of music by a money-making machine. This is when boy bands started becoming even more popular. Not to say that they hadn't started in the 80s already, but suddenly you saw the switch to commercial pop in a way that you never saw before. Rock obviously sustained, and this is not to say that the story of popular music is only the story of rock, but pop, which is music by committee, which is music by profit as a motive, that started dominating, and that dominance has frankly continued and only gets more and more these days, right? As we are moving to an era when industry could potentially use automation tools like large language models to make music. So 1956 to 1994 was an anomaly, where artists were making the most heard songs in the world, and the most heard songs in the world were not created through a formula, but they were created through some particular artistic expression. I have a feeling when future historians look at this, they will look at this rock and roll era, this era of rock music, as that renaissance of popular music. It'll be like an artistic high point. It'll be like one of those things where, it just happened. We don't know why exactly it happened. Some could say it was because of mass communication making it possible for young people to express themselves for the first time. Maybe there was a post-war kind of mood in what was going on. I have no idea the reasons why. But it was different. It is distinctly different. And this is why I say that when it comes to music, I actually say that boomers and Gen X had the best music. I'm not boomer or Gen X. I'm probably millennial. I am millennial. But for me, my favorite music is the boomer and Gen X music. It literally is bands like Pink Floyd and Queen and the Beatles. And I'm not alone in this. There are plenty of young people, and this is kind of seen by the enduring power and the enduring monetary value of the back catalogs of the Beatles, of Queen, of everybody, that music has an enduring power, right? I don't think that the musings of will.i.am in Black Eyed Peas or Miley Cyrus in whatever she used to do previously, which was very big at that particular point in time, say 10, 15 years ago, I don't think that it'll have a nostalgia value for people who grew up at that time, people of my generation, perhaps, but it's not going to have a long sustaining value. That's my prediction. But the music of this magical era, 1956 to 1994, has already demonstrated that it has a long-lasting power, which is way more than nostalgia, which is way more than people longing for the youth. The music by itself has a power that endures across generations. And I think that is the power of an artist making music versus a committee making music. All right, folks, let me know what you think. Do you agree, disagree? Love to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you next time.